Hi, I'm Ryan, and today's going to be more of like a reading vlog, and I'm going to talk to you about two gay romance books. So, in the past, I have not been a super avid romance book specifically reader. Usually in the past, most of my romance reading was through BL manga, and I did read a lot of that, but I usually haven't read a lot of like novels in the past. For, like, a number of reasons, mostly just because I figured everything I was wanting I was getting out of BL, and books are expensive, and my library's catalog is, like, not the most extensive when it comes to gay romance, because 'cause I'm mostly interested in gay or lesbian romance books. I'm not really interested in heterosexual romance. Usually, if I'm gonna read a book about like a heterosexual relationship, I usually would prefer either a subplot or it's more lit ficky and more of like an exploration of the relationship rather than like a romance relationship. You know? I'm sure that makes sense. But anyways, so I haven't actually finished either of the books I'm talking about. I've only started one of them. I have Needed Rivalry, and this is from the library, so in order to prevent I'm pretty sure my camera isn't even good enough to dox myself, but just in case I have a little rainbow flag sticky note, not rainbow flag, it's just a rainbow sticky note on the cover, covering up the part that says the library I got this from. And so yeah, Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed, we all know this one. We are familiar. And then the other one I have as an ebook on Mikobo, because this was not one my library was going to have, and you'll see why in a minute. The other one is The Orc and the Manny by Chloe Archer. And I just want to talk about the cover for this book for a minute because I love and adore it. I think it is really funny and goofy, and I think it is such a fun, like, silly Photoshop job that was done for this cover. I love how much it is very obviously a stock image of a man that was just edited and the fangs being so stupid. It's going to be a fun time. If I remember correctly, it's about I think they're both orcs, and one is just like a busy single dad, and he hires a male nanny to help take care of his kids. And then him and the nanny fall in love. I think that's the where I mostly picked that one out because Um, I wanna read more romance books that aren't, like, hairless twenty-something twunks getting up to God knows what. It's just, you know, it's not fully my persuasion, and I would just like to see more, you know, adult aged, like, we at least hit 30. There was, like, a 30-year-old in pole position. In the book pole position that I read for my F1 video, well, I didn't read it depth, whatever. It does not matter. But anyways, in my F1 video in pole position, he was like over 30. But I would like to see more, older men, fatter men, hairier men. Just, you know, it's one of those things that I don't care a whole lot how much a romance book reflects like the real lived experiences of gay men, but I would at the very least like the characters to be closer to like an average spread of the real people, just, more real people. Yeah, that's why I picked out Origin the Manny, because it looked to hopefully be something along those lines, and I'm really hoping so. And then I picked up Heated Rivalry because it's blown up and I'm curious, and I've watched hours and hours and hours and hours of edits and AMVs of those two very hot and attractive men looking at each other and fucking each other. So, yeah, I already started. I've already started Heated Rivalry. I've only read I read the prologue, but I haven't read more than that. So I'm going to come back periodically and talk about what I've read so far, and then, talk more extensively at the end once I've actually finished Heated Rivalry first, and then Orc and the Manny second. Hello, I'm back. I just finished part one of Heated Rivalry, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun. I think Ilya and Shane have a lot of like really funny banter, and I'm having a lot of fun reading through that and seeing like this early stage of their relationship where they really struggle to their personalities clash a lot in a way that is really fun to read. Ilya is such a little rage baiter, and I think it's really funny. I've seen the clip from the show when he says this, but the scene where he tells Shane where he's like, "Oh, what, you've never played with your butt before? Would that make you gay? You know what else makes you gay? Sucking a dick." Like that's really he's really funny. Ilya's r I'm definitely like it's one of the things where Ilya's really funny, but I also really love being in Shane's head. I love the way that, um, Shane's kind of, like, anxieties and spirals get kind of, like, incorporated into the narration. I think it's really fun. I think he's just a very, like it's simultaneously like, "Oh, I feel for him," but he's also really funny, and it's sweet. They're really sweet. It's really fun how, like, Rachel Reed can make these very intimate moments very casual and very fun and very silly in the way that they are in real life. Like, these and just how, like, a lot of the sex scenes, there's still, like, a lot of humor, and there's still a lot of personality, and it's not just, you know, heat and passion all the time because that's just not how it is, especially when you're, like, 19 in the way that they are, like, 19-year-olds, they're not like that, and so the way that they're written so far is very fun to read, and especially after last couple books I've read have been kinda slop. So I very much needed this. It's a very fun little treat to sink my teeth into. And now on to the 2 counters that I'm keeping up with while I read this. I was told beforehand that this book uses slit a lot, so I've started keeping a tracker of how many times that it's used. And then I've also noticed that there's, an unfortunate trend. Well, unfortunate for me, just I'm too old. There is multiple there are multiple 6/7s in this book, and so I'm keeping up with those as well. So far there are 2 6/7 mentions, and there are 4 slit mentions as of the ending of part 1, and I don't read, like, a lot of stuff where one of the characters is finding out that he's gay for, like, the first time. In the past, I did, like, outright avoid it because I found it kind of tired in how it's been, like, approached in the past, but I think the level of cope that Shane is in is, 1, realistic, 2, really fucking funny, which I think is a good summary of just, like, Shane's character writing in general. Just this whole, like his whole thing, like, early on in the book where he's like, "What do you I'm not gay, like, I've had tons of not fully sexual encounters with women, and then I enjoyed it. I'm just going to conveniently ignore the fact that I have not mentioned my girlfriend at all in any of this narration, and I'm hoping that she breaks up with me, and also, uh, I've had a couple of women blow me in the past, and I was thinking about Ilya while doing that." Like, but I'm not, you know, it's not gay or anything. I just, women just the extremely, like, every person in denial ever where it's like, "No, like, women just, like, don't do it as much for me as men." Like, he kills me. He fucking kills me. He's so funny. There's So, yeah, in the prologue, when it's, like, in further along in the timeline than, like, the rest of the book, Ilya tells him, "You need to get laid, Hollander. Waiting for a quick fuck every couple of months is not healthy." And Shane says, "I'm not waiting." And then the narration says, "It wasn't quite a lie. He obviously wasn't 100% straight, but having sex with women didn't repulse him. It just didn't do it for him like men did." Bro, bro, whatever. Whatever, man. Whatever you say, man. Yeah, otherwise, I'm really enjoying it so far, and I think I will. Let's see. I've got to part two. I can't tell if there's a part three. I haven't been able to find it. Like, okay, there's 4 parts. My dumbass. So, yeah, I'll either be back. Well, it depends how much I get through today. I might not have the opportunity to come back until after I've like completely finished the book. It just depends how my free time ends up playing out over the rest of the weekend. So, yeah. Okay. So, I'll see y'all again whenever that happens. Bye bye. Hello. It's been a couple of days since uh, I last was here. I was gone for the weekend, so I'm back to talk about it. I've finished parts 2 and 3 of Heated Rivalry, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit. And I'm really enjoying it so far. I think, um, in my last video when I was talking about pole position, I mentioned how I think the emotional development would have hit harder if it had been over a longer period of time, and it was very much a dynamic that needed years to develop rather than 1 season. And I think Heated Rivalry really shows how that is true, because this dynamic so far is almost over the course of 10 years. It starts in like 2008, and part 3 ends in 2017. So, and the dynamic is different. Obviously, like they're on different teams and they are only able to see each other once every like 3 to 6 months, like only like a couple of times a year, but I think it's still shows it's a lot more realistic in how this dynamic develops over multiple years instead of one, and I'm really enjoying that. I still really enjoy their dynamic, their banter, the kind of emotional turmoil that they're both kind of dealing with. I'm kind of at a point where I'm kind of like indifferent towards the emotional turmoil right now because I'm at the part of like that you see a lot with like enemies to lovers where they're both kind of convincing themselves that like this isn't gonna work. This isn't worth pursuing. This is dangerous. This is a horrible. I just need to end it, but neither of them can really bring themselves to end it. And you know, this is gonna be some huge fucking argument where they like not break up, but then they like change their minds and decide that they can't live with each other and they like get together or whatever. So I'm at that point right now. So I'm kind of like indifferent because you know how it's gonna end. So I kind of don't care to read it. But part 3 does end with Scott kissing his boyfriend after winning the Stanley Cup on screen, and Ilya deciding that he is gonna go spend time with Shane at the cottage. And I think that was really cute. I think 'cause it's realistic to have these 2 characters who, like, don't want to be, like, put on a pedestal as, like, representation, even though it's like even though it is important to have queer athletes, it is also exhausting, and it is a lot to put on a person's shoulders who is already in a very stressful spot. It is especially it doesn't it implies it more, um, in the show, but I've only seen 1 episode of the show, though, so it's only, like, it's only so from, like, the couple of times it's mentioned in the show, but it's not really brought up in the books where it's like Shane people already try to put that on Shane with being half Asian, like, they already try to put stuff on his shoulders that he doesn't really want to think about because he's in a stressful job, whereas, like, being openly queer is just another layer of stress of people putting onto him, and a when you are a public figure who is marginalized, there is, like, a level where people project being an activist onto you. I think the most famous example is Hunter Schafer was once asked, like, something about how it feels to be, like, a transgender activist, and she answered, like, "I'm not an activist, I'm just a famous person who is trans." And that's I think that's, like, a good summary of, like, why, but it's also just, you know, there's also stakes for Ilya where even if he never wants to go back to Russia, if he were to come out, then he that like, any choice would be taken from him, and sports are very much a industry field. Sports are a field where being marginalized adds extra layers to your ability to compete in terms of, you know, like, which Olympics you can go to, which events you can go to that you largely don't have any choice in those locations being picked. There was this is not like a sport, but there was a thing I think last year where there was a fighting game tournament, an esports tournament that was picked to take place in I wanna say Saudi Arabia, and a lot of players had to say, like, which is also just entirely different topic, but that was also just related to, like, how much, like, Saudi, investment firms have been, like, investing a lot of money into gaming recently and also sports and trying to, like, get a little bit of, like, soft power there through, like, sports. But a lot of players had to be like, "I can't go to this. I'm going to have to, like, step out from participating in this because this is in a part of the world that I just can't safely visit." So and that would be very much a problem for both of them, but more so for Ilya because he wouldn't be able to go to his home, even if he there's a difference between having that choice and then having that choice made for you, obviously. So, like, it is very believable that, like, their choices to keep it a secret is very much realistic and validated, and I'm enjoying that emotional turmoil part of it, but definitely but, like, a lot of the other where it's like, I don't know. There's parts of it I do and don't like. It's more just like, I know where it's going to end, so seeing them be in a big huff about it is just kind of, like, not as interesting to read compared to the beginning when it was more like copium about even being in love in the first place, whereas now both of them are very much like, "No, I am, like, extremely in love with him, and I want to spend as much time as possible with him, but this is, like, a bad idea. This is dangerous. It's a bad idea. This is just not for us." And whereas, like, uh, and just not wanting to be, like, the athletes put on a pedestal compared to, like, Scott Hunter, who just publicly came out, like, after winning the Stanley Cup, which is another thing. Which is another thing that I think, um, I don't think it's definitely gonna be, like, brought up explicitly, but something that you never really hear talked about with, like, sports romance or sports fiction is, like, the expectations of also, if you are marginalized in a sport, you do have to be better to justify your participation in the sport. Like, I don't think it's guy who can't help himself but bring up Formula One. I don't think it is a coincidence that the first and so far only black person to participate in Formula One is also one of the best drivers on the fucking planet. Like, and like when it comes to kind of the more subtler biases and more subtle bigotries, is that in order to justify like your participation in a sport when you're marginalized is you also have to just be better because mediocrity is not allowed and it is just not accepted. And if you are mediocre, then it just gives bigots and the system more of a reason to exclude you. So, it's definitely like in a world where Scott Hunter is a real person, like, it is very much it's like, well, how are you gonna get mad at him? He literally just won the Stanley Cup. Like, right, like, what are you gonna do? So, that's my thoughts on that so far. Otherwise, I know nothing about hockey. So the actual, like, hockey side of it, it's pure set dressing for me. I don't know jack shit about hockey. I'm just reading the words and going, "Whatever you say, beautiful," whenever they're talking about the structure of the teams, the playing, like, it's pure vibes for me. I barely know I can barely, like, imagine any of the hockey stuff in my head because I barely know what, like I know what a hockey rink looks like. I know the silhouette of, like, a hockey uniform. I've, like I haven't been to a hockey game since I was, like, 15, 14. I just it's just not my sport. So, I don't really have anything to say about, like, the actual sports side of it other than, like, I like the set dressing. I also one thing that I do like about sports romance is I think it creates really good, like, potential for, like, their personalities because especially in a pro sport, like, you're gonna be really competitive. Like, the people are going to be really, really competitive because it is a pro sport. So I think that and you see that in, like, Shane and Ilya and, like, other sports romance, like, it creates this very fun dynamic, like, even when they're not playing, where they, like, create challenges for each other, and they're very competitive when it's, like, not necessary, but it's in, like, a fun banter way, and I really like that. I think it creates fun, like, chemistry and creates a more fun dynamic when the characters are really competitive with each other over shit that is really stupid and, like, not ultimately necessary to be competitive about, and I think I just really like Ilya. I'm kind of sad that, like, Shane is the one that gets more time with the narration and, like, the POVs because I really like spending time with Ilya. I think he's really funny. I love his sense of humor. I love that he's a little rage baiter. I also just really like I really like Connor's story. I think, like, both of the actors are, like, extremely gorgeous, and they're both really funny. But I really like Ilya's personality. Shane is a little too much like, "Oh, fuck, he's just like me for real." Um, in a way that's like, I enjoy it, but I also would have wanted more of a 50-50 balance on their POVs, whereas it definitely, like, you spend a lot more time with Shane in the book, and I can't speak on how that's done in the show, though, because again, I've only seen 1 episode, and after that, I've really only just seen, like, clips from edits and AMVs on the internet, so I have no clue how, like, the rest of the narrative is handled, but I do really like the show too. I love the cinematography of I like men, that's the problem, but yeah, I don't think I have anything more to say. I will hopefully finish Heated Rivalry today and start the work in the Manny today as well. I'm definitely not gonna get through work in the Manny today, obviously. But but um anyways, I'll see you when I'm some semblance of finished with Heated Rivalry and we'll talk about it then. Hi. I finished it. I just like switched laundry out, so I'm like mildly out of breath. So I just finished it and I enjoyed it. I thought it was really sweet. It was really tender. I was. So they didn't end up doing the, like, big argument that's not a breakup, and then getting back together, which I really enjoyed because I always think it's, like, kind of, like, tired in, romance things when you kind of, like, these are fake. You know these takes are fake. Like, you and I, we know. Right? We know it's not gonna we know that's not permanent or whatever. So, I like that it was kind of more just like they were just like, "Oh, we like each other, and we're both willing to, like, put in the work for each other, so, like, why shouldn't we?" And then just very just being, like, really sweet and tender after that. It was really cute. I really liked these moments of where they're just like, when you're just with someone that you're really, like, emotionally into, and you just have these moments of normalcy and domesticity. I don't know if that's a real word. I'm just saying things. Where you just kind of are, like, falling in love with them, like, over and over again, and you just are having these where they're just like Ilya's just watching Shane, like, put dishes in the dish rack, and it's just like, "Oh my god, I love him so much," and it's very cute and sweet and really true to life when you're, like, really in love with someone where you just have these moments of just watching them do nothing and really enjoy watching them do nothing because you just really like them, and I think it was just really cute watching them soften over the course of the book, and now and now I get to tell you about I think I mentioned these after I'd finished part 1, but I'd kept 2 counters of things. Someone had told me that, like, this book uses slit a lot, so bro, okay, my phone's in my pocket. I kept a counter for every time they used the word slit because I thought it was very funny to use in a romance book between 2 cisgendered men, and I also there was, like there was, like, this odd coincidence where 6-7 came up multiple times, and I thought it was really goofy, so I also have it marked for every time that came up as well. So the final counters for those are slit came up 9 times. So twice it was used 2 different times, it was used twice on the same page, which I thought was really funny. It is used for the dick hole. So I was like, that kinda makes more sense because for those unfamiliar, it is kind of like coin slot shaped, so I was like, "That is you're not it's not completely stolen valor to use slit for that one," but because if it had been, like, slit for the asshole, absolutely would have been stolen valor, not my slit. And then 6-7 came up only 3 times, coincidentally 3 times too many, though. It was just really funny that th this book is significantly older than, like, that meme by a lot, and it happened to come up that many times. So it came up when they're doing the All-Star games. They're doing, like, those little, like, gimmicky, like, games the day before the All-Star games the first All-Star game, and Shane beats the record, and the record that he sets is 6.7 seconds. And then also Shane's final goals for his rookie season is 67 goals. And then Shane's teammate JJ, it says his height is 6'7", which also can I have some noise for JJ? Because like, I really enjoyed him. I really I really enjoyed JJ. I really enjoyed the scene that Ilya has with Ryan Price, I think was his name. The, like, humongous guy that he's with for 1 season, and they have that moment where he finds out Ryan Price has, like, flying he has, like, anxiety on airplanes, and he kind of, like, helps him chill out, and they watch Fast 5 together, and Ilya gets, like, really into talking about Fast and Furious. I thought that was a really cute scene. When they're like, "Yeah, JJ is, like, 6'7", and he's over 250 pounds of muscle, and he's just, like, this super humongous, charming, personable guy, and he's, like, got all these friends and all these connections, and he's just that life at the party." I was like, "I like him, he sounds cute." And then I also like Ryan Price because I'm a sucker for a gentle giant. I'm a sucker for a humongous guy that looks fucked up and evil, but he's actually just like a sweetheart. I'm a sucker for it. I'm a sucker for cat mowing in general. I think it's really fun and cute. While we're on a tangent about like the side characters, I thought it was really funny, like how often they would do digs at like Hayden and Hayden's looks. I thought that was really goofy. Like, uh, there were a couple of times where Ilya especially would, like, make digs that he's, like, not all that hot, and then there was one point where they were like, "Oh, yeah, his wife is, like, so out of the league." It is I thought that was, like, really goofy. I think yeah, I don't really have any, like, super, like, grandstanding thoughts or onions other than I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed, like, the characterizations. I think it was fun. I think it was I'm not sure how I feel about, like, the charity thing. I I don't know, like, this is the thing where it's like, I'm not familiar with hockey, so I'm not familiar with the overall, like, fan culture of hockey, so to me, this whole thing of, like, will you starting a charity together to kind of, like, dip everyone else's toes into the idea that we're friends, and then from there we'll get you people used to us being friends, and then we'll maybe come out later. It felt a little contrived as opposed to them just being closeted and, like, just casually in an interview being like, "Yeah, we're not really, like, rivals off the ice anymore. We are older now, and we've sort of just chilled out." But again, I'm not familiar with hockey. I don't really know anything about, like, any players in the past who were, like, really bitter rivals, and then if they just chilled out or not. I don't know, I just couldn't really buy into that part as much, but I would be down for more about them, though. Like, I know there's another book, I think The Long Game? I think The Long Game is about them, and then there's another book coming out this year that's also gonna be Shane and Ilya centered, so I might. I think once the new book comes out, I might read those 2 back to back. I just don't really feel because I have plenty of time before, like, a season 2 comes out or something, but I am looking forward to watching the show and seeing, like, how the show adapts it and handles it because it's really fun and sweet and tender book, and I can definitely see why Jacob Tierney was interested and picked it up, and from what I've watched and seen of the show, I think they did a really good job, so Yeah, that was Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. I'm probably not going to read much else of the series outside of the Shane and Ilya stuff, or if do, it's not gonna be, like, anytime soon. I'm just not really as interested in the other characters. Like, the concept of the first book that's about, like, Scott and Kip sounds cute, but also, like, Scott as a character didn't really, like, jump out to me. He just kind of seems like a every guy, hockey player sorta guy, so it wasn't really like and it's like, it's more of like it's a meet cute or whatever, stuff like that. Like, there was just nothing really about it that either tropes or content or personality-wise that really, like, jumped out to me. So I was just not I don't know if I'll read anything outside of, like, the Shane and Ilya parts of the Game Changer series, just because that's just me personally, and that's just my taste. So, but yeah, that's it about Heated Rivalry. Still with this fuck ass little rainbow sticky note over it to cover the library sticker. I will be back later then, once I've gotten through a good bit of the next book. Hello. So, so I'm about a third of the way. Yeah, I'm like 34%. So I'm like a third of the way through the work in the Manny. Right. So I'm kind of not enjoying it. So for the vague, like, quick plot description is there's this orc. His name is Dr. Targan Wildthorn. He is a retired academic he retired so that he could focus on writing in-universe nonfiction books about orcs that is for, like, accessible, like, broader audiences to learn about orcs because this world takes place in, like, a fantasy version of the real world where everything's kind of the same, just with, like, fantasy races are real. It's like orcs, gargoyles, um, I don't know, just, like, other, like, random, like, D&D, like, fantasy races are real, and he has gotten custody of these two young twin orcs who are about 8 years old following the murder of his childhood best friend at the hands of her abusive ex-husband. She was murdered while trying to flee him, and the ex-husband had, like, connections to, like, the monster mafia, so he was able to track her down, and he tried to kill her to, like, gain custody of the children, and but the children were able to be rescued, and then Dr. Wildthorn was given custody, and he is very overwhelmed by having to take care of children. He's never had children before. He uses the phrase confirmed bachelor a lot in terms of his history with dating and children. So he has his gargoyle friend Vash Darkwing go through whatever connections and hires the human protagonist, Max Mitlode, to be the nanny or Manny, male nanny, to help with the childcare of these two children and, like, relieve a lot of the stress and difficulties of childcare. And so and then Max Mitlode and Dr. Wildthorn then fall in love. over the course of this, while also this whole side plot is happening with the murder of Targan's childhood friend, who was also childhood friends with Vash. It's like Targan and the childhood friend Sharna grew up together, and then they met Vash in college, and they were like the dynamic trio or whatever. So I'm not really enjoying it for like a couple of different reasons. One, really, really um exhausting and tired inclusion and portrayal of fantasy racism, which I'm not really a fan. One, this book is labeled like cozy MM fantasy romance or whatever. So I was expecting it to be, he's hired to take care of the kids. The orc professor learns how to take care of the kids, also falls in love. There's literally no plot. They just fall in love and live happily ever after. And I honestly would have been fine with that. I would have been fine with it. But now there's also like this weird like domestic abuse side plot. There's like all this discussion of like fantasy racism where it's literally just real world racism, but instead of with people of color, it's with like D&D monsters, and it's just like odd. It's so odd, uh, and I think it's just not a very, especially it's really odd to include that when he, the author's own writing regarding these like fantasy races is also just as like flat and unnuanced as like basically like 80s D&D guides for like how these different races behave, like attributing like inherent personality traits and stuff like to these races where like, oh, orcs are naturally competitive and naturally have like these types of personalities. Gargoyles have like these types of personalities naturally. And it's just like, are you dumb? And so there's that. And if that wasn't there, reading the orcs and the orcs POV is the primary like uh, POV chapters where that is talked about. You get POV chapters from the orc main character and then from the human main character. And then there's the human main character. Oh my god. Extremely voicey in a way that I don't like. It's I'm not really vibing with the human main character. I find him extremely annoying and um not interesting or fun to follow. And he does this thing where like he cannot shut up. He cannot shut up about how hot he finds the Targan, and it's just tiring. It's so tiring. Like he uses specifically the word "hulkalicious" like a lot. Hold on, I can find you the number since I'm reading this on ebook. But yeah, he references the Hulk a lot. He references Shrek a lot. He references like any green cultural figure. He references it a lot. It's really exhausting. Like a lot of the writing of this book feels like the author was exposed to the idea that like about the media analysis theory of how like monsters and fantasy have been used to talk about othering and talk about race both positively and negatively, and then didn't do any further thinking about it and just like included it in the book for no reason. Cultural is used 13 times, and it's one of those things where I get a lot of the book is supposed to be like very tongue in cheek writing, but there's too much tongue in that cheek, and it needed a lot of holding back to be like more fun. And there's like very little chemistry between the two. There's there's too many jokes that just don't land. There's a lot of like, "Oh, it's funny because it's crude," like, type of jokes, and I think it's just a lot of this book is not for me. It's not my sense of humor. Uh, it's not like it's just which is heartbreaking because it's also orc and human instead of orc for orc, like I was hoping. I was really hoping it was gonna be 2 orcs. The human main character is fat, which was nice for all of 2 seconds before he opened his mouth, and will not shut up about how much he likes food, which is also awesome. And I was hoping the orc would also be fat, but not really. He's kind of just like big and muscular, which is, I guess. Yeah, the plot is just kind of whatever right now. Like I said, I'm only a third of the way through, and I'm trying to not DNF it because I am reading it for this video. But I might. I'm giving myself like the rest of the week and the weekend to read of it whatever I can, and then I think wherever I am by like the end of the weekend is just I'm just gonna call it, and I'm just gonna call it there and DNF it there because this is it feels like such a slog to read through because I'm so tired. Also, the main character's outfits, the human main character's outfits are so ugly. And how are they described? These outfits are hideous. Oh my god. I thought it was bad, like the first outfit it was, because it was like a bright pink blouse with like a rainbow vest over it, and then leggings, and then the main character has like purple hair. I was like, that's really like tacky, but whatever. At least it kind of like goes together. And then there's another one where it's like a yellow caftan with like purple leggings. Uh, there's another one that's like purple leggings and some yellow shirt, and it, like this does not. This is this shit is ugly. This shit is uggo, and it's horrible. And I've like refused to imagine the main character in my head with those outfits on. I imagine the main character with like the human character Max McLeod. I just imagine him with whatever better outfit in my head I can think of that would also like work with the scene because I just don't I don't want to imagine that in my head. At least the orc dresses like fine. He just wears like the academia professor uniform with like button down shirt, slacks, maybe a sweater sometimes. A lot of the book so far is in like late spring, early summer, so it's just button down shirt. If it gets warm, he like pulls the sleeves up, and then slacks, and then loafers or something like that, dress shoes. There's also just a lot of with the Manny. There's a lot of kind of like tongue in cheek, like rewording things to be for boys. So he's a Manny. He uses a Manny purse. He smacks C. Poppins instead of Mary Poppins. It's just it's just so tiring. It's so tiring and annoying, and it's way too voicey. I was hoping that when I started getting to the sex scenes, that it would be less voicey, so that the author can focus on, like, portraying the intimacy. But no, no, it's still it's so it's not great. It's really not great. I guess I can give the author, like, props for being able to, like, the orc and the human POVs are written in, like, dramatically different voices, which can be hard to do for a lot of writers. It can be really hard to, like, write character dialogue in a way that is you are able to, like, actually distinguish between who is talking. But I think this one goes in such a direction where you're doing it too much. Also, the children's dialogue is ass. It's there's this odd thing where there's a lot about childcare in this book. Like, there's a lot of discussion to an almost, like, annoying degree about, like, proper childcare, important, like, childcare milestones, like, how to be around them, how to interact with them, how to regulate their schedules, how to instill, like, normalcy and stability in a child's life, especially after really horrible traumas, like your mother being murdered by your father and what that does to children. So it's interesting where it's like there's either where the author either has a lot of history with childcare or did a lot of research into childcare, but didn't do enough research with like how children talk. A lot of the 2 kids, they're 8 years old. They're 8-year-olds. Their dialogue is really odd where it's like either it's like too clever, too mature. They're like really emotionally in tune with like what the adults are going through. Uh, they're just and it's one of those things where it's not that it's like unbelievable that children can be like mature in this way, but they don't speak like they have all of like they fully understand like these experiences and stuff like that. So the children's dialogue is also like annoying to read. Also with the fantasy racism is there's like this heavy emphasis on like the whole like oh I can't like the human being like oh I can't like pursue the orc because he's my boss is the problem for all of like maybe 5 chapters, and then he finds out that he's technically the gargoyle friend Vash Dartwing that is technically his employer because his salary and whatever is paid through a trust fund that was set up by Sharna, the dead best friend. Before she had passed, she had set up a extremely sizable trust, and which is managed by Vash, the gargoyle. So Vash is the human's boss. So there is technically, I guess, no real, like, unethical dynamic happening if they were to want to pursue each other. And then there's after they have but then, like, while they're still going through the, like, "Oh, does he like me like I like him?" There's this whole thing where it's like, "Oh, but, like, it would be an interspecies relationship." Like, I don't know if like, the orc is like, "I don't know if he's ever been with" they also use the word "other kind" to refer to, like, the non-human sentient races. They use other kinds. He's like, "I don't know if he's ever been with an other kind before. I don't know if he's even, like" wants to date someone who is other kind, and then the human is like, "Well, I don't know if he's ever been with a human before, and I've never been in an interspecies relationship." It's incredibly cringy to read. It is so cringy to read. I don't like it, I don't like it. And then there's a scene where they go to the school because the children are about to go to start public school in the fall, so they go to tour the elementary school in the town that they live, and they run into the principal of the school and the teacher who will be teaching the children, and they find out that they are a bogeyman and a human who are in an interspecies relationship, and they ask questions. They ask questions about it. And I'm like, first of all, time and place. First of all, time and place. Second of all, what the fuck? Third of all, what the fuck? And then them like asking about the principal's like experience with being in an interspecies relationship is kind of them realizing like, oh, he likes me mutually too. And then that like initiates like more flirting and leads to the first like sex scene. And then they also don't even really like fully have sex because the org like stops it and is like, we need to slow down because we need to have like a more in-depth discussion about our anatomical differences and how to like actually like negotiate. Y'all know the therapy speak Joker post? Do y'all know about the therapy speak Joker post? That's that's kind of how a lot of this book is written. This book, like everyone in this book has like too many hours of therapy under their belt, and there's too much like, which I think just part of which is probably why there's like the domestic abuse murder side plot and the racism is because I don't think the author really knew how to add in like emotional like plot points or adding like more of a burn to the relationship. So she needed to add in these like external factors to create plot instead of having like any kind of like slow. There's no emotional burn at all. Like the human, he shows up and he like immediately like takes care of everything. The children behave perfectly for him. They never act out. If they start fighting, he will, say something like sternly and like perfect for them and they just like immediately drop it. The They have like a pet hellhound slash like kind of like Cerberus type of dog, and he also like never causes problems for more than like 2 seconds. So I think it's one of those things where it just didn't she didn't want to like have any kind of like extra emotional problems or burn or anything. Everything just works out immediately and there's no issues and everyone knows exactly what to say at all times. Everyone knows how to communicate everything perfectly. Everyone is like on the same page in terms of their emotions and how to communicate their emotions. No one has like any emotional issues. Not even the children whose mom was murdered, not in front of them, but was murdered 6 months ago, and they know that their mother was murdered by their father, and they really have like very little issues about it. The orc like Targan when he like gained custody, he like immediately put them in like child therapy and family therapy with him, and that's just going along perfectly. There, it's I mean, I'm only a third of the way through it. There's somehow so much more. This book is not long. It's not a tome, but it's like longer than I think it needs to be. It's the print version, I think it's like 330 pages. With the font settings I have on my e-reader, it's like 400 pages, and that's too long. This could have been a novella. I feel like this could have been a novella, and just cut out all of the stupid racism and domestic abuse side shit. Oh my god. You can use like fantasy to talk about oppression. Like if you like fantasy, it's uses mirrors to real world oppression that does it well. Delicious in Dungeon, a very good example that also has works and talks about and uses like world building to talk about oppression and like the effects that that has on the world. Which at Atelier doesn't have works, but does talk about how oppression functions and like has themes centered around like oppression using magic and fantasy as driving force for that. But this is like again, it's labeled as like it's supposed to be like cozy and it's like too jokey, too tongue in cheek to be also trying to tackle these like extremely serious topics that need like it should have been two completely different books. Ugh. Okay, so there's a part where he's talking about how the orc looks in like his usual like outfits and stuff, and he says the combination does all kinds of naughty things to my libido. Hulkalicious for sure. And then who wouldn't be? He's hot as fuck. He's all Hulk meets Professor X, and I want to climb him like Mount Everest. And then oh, here's one of the ugly outfits. Silky bright yellow harem pants, a multicolored sequined camisole, and a diaphanous purple shawl. To complete the ensemble, he carries a frilly rainbow pride parasol in one hand and Princess Peach, his pet chihuahua, in the other hand. So, like, him having a chihuahua named Princess Peach is actually kind of cute. I do like the doggies. But there's also kind of this pseudo romance side plot happening with Princess Peach the Chihuahua and Waffles the not Cerberus Hellhound, and it's just kind of like, what are we doing here? So it's kind of giving doesn't isn't like Legally Blonde 2, there's like a side plot with like dog romance. It's giving that. Oh, here's another like therapy speak joker. Is the human like makes a joke about how like, oh, back when you were a teacher, there must have been like so many students like wanting to fuck you bad. Like they were probably all over you. And he says, I would never date a student. He frowns. It's highly unethical. There's a power imbalance there that just isn't right, no matter the circumstances. I would never take advantage of a student like that. It's like, no fucking duh. Therapy speak, Joker. No duh. Am I God's bravest soldier for putting myself through this? I think so. I think so. So yeah, there's 25 chapters and an epilogue, and I'm on chapter 9. So if I can get through like most of it before like the end of the weekend, then I might just power through and end it. But if I can only get like halfway through or something before the end of the weekend, then I'm just gonna call it and like DNF it because don't. I have other shit I want to read that I would much rather be reading than this, and I have other books I am currently reading that I want to finish. I have other stuff I want to read for videos and stuff like that. So it's like I'm not going to prolong it any more than like it really needs to be for something that I'm most likely not going to have uh, much else like super interesting to say other than I think it's bad. I think it's incredibly half baked. So I lied. I actually don't wanna get halfway through. I don't wanna do this. I don't wanna read it anymore. I'm DNFing. I'm DNFing. I'm not gonna finish it. I can't do it. It was like once I don't have the willpower. Once I was like, "Oh, I'll just get, like, as far as I can." And then I was reading more, and I was like, "Actually, I'm not even enjoying this. I'm not even having fun. It's a slower read than I thought it was going to be. I'm not having any fun with it. It's written like shit. I don't like the narration. I'm not actually enjoying anything about these characters anymore. I'm just not. So I'm not. I'm done. I'm done. I'm free. I'm freeing myself of any more filming for this video. So, yeah, I only got 40% of the way through, which, like, I think 40% is enough where you can get a vibe for you can get enough of a read for a romance book to tell if you're not gonna like it or not, and I don't think I think I'm just I think I would only get, like, more and more like, even more unnecessarily aggravated with the narration if I were to keep forcing myself to read this beyond, like, what I really want to do. So, yeah, uh, not great, not great. But whatever, we got 1 hit and we got 1 miss with this video, so I think that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You know, I do wanna read more I still wanna read more, like, gay romance in the future, and I have a couple, like, recommendations and stuff. This one's just not this one just had too many things that's just pissing me off, and I wanna be done. I wanna read something else. I wanna read a book that, like, is written, like, I wanna turn my brain on, I've had my slop. I've had my slop for the month. I need a real book that's, like, saying things to me instead of, like, doing the work myself and, like, overreading into stuff or, like, having it spoon-fed to me. Because like, before these 2 books, I read Woman Down by Colleen Hoover, and that was slop. Extremely boring slop, extremely spoon-fed. So, final thoughts are I enjoyed Heated Rivalry. Not enough to immediately read the other books in the series that I do wanna read, but I probably will eventually. And Orchard and the Manny, not great. Not a great first impression on that author either. It's like, I'm probably not going to read any more from that author if this is, like, the standard for that. I did see some reviews saying that, like, the audiobook narration was really good, so maybe it's more digestible in audiobook, maybe the narration comes across better when it's spoken instead of reading it in my head, but I don't know. So, yeah, that's all I got for this video. This video took so much longer than I thought it would to film, purely because of my waffling around Orchard and Manny and, like, how long it took me to get this modicum amount through, but anyways, I'm gonna go now.